What's up, everyone? Welcome back to a spooky night.
Ooh.
Because we have two ghouls that are joining us tonight.
We're bringing the spooks.
Yes, we have the men of Myths
I ain't
and Monsters.
afraid of no ghost.
Introduce yourselves.
I am Billy Reed,
And I am Curtis Cooper, and we are the hosts of Myths and Monsters.
Yes.
where
and
we talk all about cryptids, ghosts, aliens, and everything in between.
yes, they're on the day before us. Same Wednesday, 7 to 8. And I'm Bradley Cooper, and
I'm Katie Cooper.
so we got the gang back together to talk about
Gang's
Halloween.
all here.
So, today we have entered the spooky season, where everyone dresses up as ghouls or goblins.
Ghouls.
Oh, ghouls.
Not
Pretty
ghouls.
macabre, huh, Brad?
Macabre. Hey, I do like the sound of macabre better, but, I guess
That sounds
macabre
like-
is the way.
It sounds like the Pokemon Kadabra.
Abracadabra.
Alakazam.
Abra.
Kadabra.
Alakazam. Gengar.
Bop-a-da-
Haunter.
bippity-boppity-boop.
Ghastly.
You have to start with Ghastly. Gengar's the last one.
I'll go backwards, Billy.
That doesn't even make sense.
I remember the Pokemon. When I was your age, there was nothing but Pokemans as far as the eye can see. I tell you what.
I tell you what.
What?
I tell you what. All right, so people might either dress up as something spooky, like a goblin, or maybe the latest Avenger. They want to go
And
to
who
Captain.
is the latest Avenger?
I guess Captain Marvel would be the latest one.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, the most
Probably.
recent one to join.
The latest ones would really be Iron Man and Black Widow.
R.I.P.
Aw, too
R.I.P.
soon.
Spoiler alert.
I think it's well past the time for spoiler alerts.
To each their own.
R.I.P. Thanos. I mean, that man had a plan.
Nah, he died twice and deserved it both times.
He had a plan.
He deserved it both
Dank
times.
history stands for Thanos.
Stands for Thanos.
Justice for Thanos.
Thanos was right, man.
The hardest of choices requires the strongest of wills. I hope they remember you, Myths and Monsters.
Thanos was just above us.
When I am done, half of Horizon Radio will be left.
And who would that be?
Well, Charlie obviously has
Oh, yeah,
to
Charlie has to
survive.
stay.
The righteous ones.
Exactly.
Matt will just fade away. So people gather together, their kids go trick-or-treating, but everyone tries to eat their entire weight in candy.
And then you feel sick.
Yeah. It also happens to be my most favorite holiday.
He proposed on Halloween.
Yes.
Oh my.
It
I
was
love
so cute.
What
Delightful.
a romantic.
He
Yep.
showed up in a Darth Vader costume.
Well, you were
Or
still
a
working
Darth
at the
Vader
IUS library at that
Yes,
time.
I was working at the library, and he showed up.
Yeah. It was a
And-
Friday, wasn't it? There was a
It
cowboy
was a
outside.
Saturday. I worked Saturdays.
Saturday, that's right.
And then he took me to ice cream, and then he proposed.
Yep.
It was really
It was
cute.
beautiful.
So, Brad, why is this your favorite holiday, other than the magical love?
Well,
Of Darth Vader and ice
I
cream.
really love the season,
Oh, the season.
the
Fall is
weather.
great.
Yeah, the weather's really great. I really love the costumes, people dressing up, cosplay for the poor man.
Exactly.
It's just a great time of year. That being said, Halloween has often been a pretty controversial holiday. For many people who grew up in maybe more conservative Christian denominations, I've heard
Not
it.
even just Christian, like more conservative
Yeah,
in general.
but Katie, you've seen those Jack Chick tracks, right?
Oh,
Where they say
yes.
Halloween is the devil's birthday.
It
I
is.
hate the devil and his stupid birthday.
Nah, I think because growing up, my parents were always cool with Halloween, but like where I went to school was very against Halloween.
Yeah.
My parents were
And
anti-Halloween.
I think the craziest thing I ever heard was I think I was a sophomore in high school, and this one kid I was in, because we would open up every
Yeah.
class with a word of prayer, and they would always take prayer requests. And one kid I was in class with asked the teacher to pray for him because he was volunteering at a haunted house.
Yeah.
And the teacher up and said he refused to pray for it because he wouldn't bless anything that was quote unquote demonic in nature.
Oh, man. That's rough.
That's a
Poor kid.
spicy
is
take,
hard.
poor kid.
Remind me later, and I'll tell you who the two people in that story were.
I think I can guess.
No, you probably can't.
Anyway,
So there have been a lot of, secular concerns as well. People have raised concerns in the past about vandalism, safety. There's that big fake scare about needles and candy.
Oh, that scare was fake. That's good to hear.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was completely fake. I just debunked that.
Nice.
Razor blades and candy was
Yeah.
the one I always heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, razor
Oh,
blades
yes.
or needles. Yeah. how could you even hide a razor blade?
Well,
in
like
a
what I
pack of
always thought
candy?
was so crazy is what psychopath would be so dedicated to their scheme that they would meticulously unwrap a Hershey bar, melt it, and remold it with the razor blade inside, and then
You
perfectly
could
wrap
always
it
just
back
shove
up.
it in.
Yeah, it just seems like too much work.
Yeah.
In fact, I've heard of even some house people they'll refuse to pass out candy. They'll just like shut off the lights and go hide in the basement.
That's
so
what my parents did.
Yeah, I heard about people back in my school days who would do that.
yeah,
Just lock the doors.
We
and
did
hide in
that,
the
but just
basement.
no one was trick-or-treating in our neighborhood, so...
gotcha.
We hid in the basement with the movie and ate all the candy.
So, what's interesting is obviously Maine people approach the holiday differently. For some, it's just a time to watch horror movies or celebrate the macabre, or for some people, it's just hey, I just want to dress up, go to a party or something like
It
that.
might be the most, like, divergent holiday with how people either celebrate it or lack thereof.
yeah,
In
it
America,
really is.
at
Oh,
least.
there's a spooky skeleton.
Hi, spooky skeleton.
That's a skeleton.
That's a skeleton. So
We all have them.
we're going to talk a
Most
little.
of us do.
Yes.
Did you ever? Okay, but this is a thought I'm stealing from Billy. But did you ever think about like how all of our skeletons are wet right now? They're like moist. They're like sitting in like
Ooh,
moisture. We
moist
always think of skeletons
skeletons.
as being dry, but
As an octopus, I don't really know what you're talking about.
you
would
listeners
be.
can't prove that he's
Can't
not
shoot,
an octopus.
shoot your ink.
Ew.
Wait, that's squid.
That's
That's right.
squids.
That's
That's
right.
that's racist.
Yeah, I apologize to all the
Don't appropriate the squid.
to all the octopuses listening. I'm sorry.
Octopi.
Okay, I don't know all your sayings. Okay.
On behalf of mollusks
Look.
everywhere, I must ask you to step down as host of
Look,
this program.
as a shark myself, I've never been friends with many an octopus, but let me
Brad.
tell you what.
Bradley, listen. I know sharks. Sharks are friends of mine. You, Brad, are no shark.
Hey now,
Oh, no.
you're hanging out with them other sharks over from the South Ocean.
I assumed you were from the South Ocean. Where else would that accent come from?
No, we're from the North Ocean. Here in the ocean, the accents flip. You should know that.
That doesn't make sense.
It flips. Anyway, so back to Halloween. So we're going to talk about a holiday that there's a lot of debate about where exactly it originated. We don't about what influenced the holiday, since we are talking about multiple cultures across time. So we're going to look at a few theories of its origin, and then we're going to say which one, we think is probably the most likely, as well as some conclusions about the holiday.
Sounds good.
So, most people, the most common, if you ever watch a video about Halloween, the first thing they'll bring up is this Celtic holiday known as, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this, so please bear with me, Samhain. Now, Samhain. So, this was a Celtic festival, and the word literally means summer's end in Irish. This holiday would mark the end of the harvest season on October 31st and November 1st. And the Celtic people, and for those who don't know, Celtic people would be like Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and a lot of Europe as well. So they would have all sorts of these seasonal festivals. And it's believed that this fall festival could have dated back at least 5,000 years because we found some tombs in Ireland that are aligned with the sunrise around this time of the year. So a lot of people think that they celebrate it back then.
Wait, why tombs?
Well, because, if your tomb, the opening of the tomb, where it would be facing.
Oh, you're going to explain that later.
Yeah.
Okay.
The opening of the tomb would be facing the sun as it would rise during that time of the year.
Okay.
So,
Very specific.
yeah, very specific. Well, a lot of ancient people would do that. Like, they'll arrange their architecture around the sun and, the seasons. So, during Samhain, people would gather around bonfires on hills because they believed at the end of October that spirits from the realm of the gods and the dead could easily cross over. And also fairies would come over as well. And they wanted to kind of avoid fairies because, a fairy could be good, bad, or neutral, and you didn't want them to...
Fairies. I do.
Yes, they did. And another...
Fairy broke into my house one time and stole all my salt shakers.
Yeah, they did. Did it eat all of them?
I don't know. There was a trail of salt leading to the woods. I followed it and was met with only a giant pile of half-broken salt shakers.
Yeah. Was it a pink fairy?
I don't know. I didn't get a good look at it.
So...
What a hussy.
Oh, yeah. So, another thing we believe they did is that they would wear masks around the bonfire so that no ghosts could recognize them.
Very Day of the Dead.
Yeah, for sure. And the first mention of it in written form is in an Irish writings in the 10th century, and these sources give us a few information. Like, there's this one source called the Book of Invasions that tells this myth that during this festival, the people had to give 2/3 of their children, 2/3 of their corn and their milk to a group called the Fomorians, which were destructive powers of nature.
Were they like elementals or something?
Yeah, like elementals, like, the Titans in Greek mythology.
Oh, okay. Makes sense.
However, it's difficult to ascertain much from these early tales, and some experts claim that there may have been no supernatural rites in ancient times at Samhain, but simply all the gathering of all the people together, like, the royalty and the soldiers, would just lead to all these crazy stories. But in later years, such as in the 18th and 19th centuries, people in the Celtic areas began to practice other things for Samhain, because this is a celebration that continued throughout the pagan years into the Christian years. For example, in the Hebrides in Scotland, a man would dress up in cowhide, would run around the entire village, and then they'd have a bit of his hide burnt so everyone could breathe in the smoke and ward off bad luck.
A bit of the cowhide, not his own hide.
No, not his own hide. Like, he'd just run around in circles, and then they take it off. It's old Jimmy. We're going to burn his hide. So other practices involve, like, bobbing for apples as, a form of game, or divination. Divination means, like, trying to predict something.
Really? I thought it was just a gross way to get apples.
No.
No?
No.
Okay. What would they...
Well,
like
kind
of like an 8-ball? Like, if you
something like that.
if you grabbed it with one swipe, it meant something? Or do you know anything about it?
I didn't go that far, but I would assume that's probably what it was.
Okay.
So when you're at Fall Fest next time,
Instead of thinking about all the spit and germs that we're swapping, think about I don't know, a question.
Yeah,
you
think
have.
about what's
thought
going to
about
happen.
that.
Think
Wow,
about
that's
what's going to
gross.
happen to O'Malley.
I'm sorry.
when I look at the camera and I'm like,
So, other practices is in the 16th century, parts of Ireland, Scotland, and Wales would have people going from house to house in costume, and they would start singing or they would recite poems for food.
Trick or treat.
So it's almost like kind of Christmas caroling.
That's
in
what
a
I
way.
was thinking.
yeah, it's
it
kind of like
sounds
a merger of the two.
Yeah, and some people would dress up as dead people to get offerings for the dead for their protection. Like, they might dress up as old O'Malley who died, 10 years ago and be like, I need my beer, give me to me. And, they'd give it to O'Malley.
So it's like bring us some figgy pudding, but like beer.
Yeah. I mean, this is Celtic we're talking about.
Yeah.
And they would also make things
Oi,
like...
me shillelagh, bring me some potatoes, lass.
That's a good accent. I like that.
You shall never have me Lucky Charms.
Not every Irish person eats Lucky Charms.
Just the American ones.
That's true.
Oi, donkey.
Well, no.
Bring me back my turnips.
What is that, donkey?
I lost my turnips.
What are you doing in my swamp?
So, the earliest jack-o'-lanterns actually come from this area because people would make these little turnips and they'd, like, dig eyes and faces in them. And these turnips are pretty terrifying if you ever looked at pictures of them.
Turnip lantern.
Yep.
I think they're more terrifying than jack-o'-lanterns.
Oh, yeah, way more terrifying.
Jack-o'-lanterns aren't that scary.
No, that's because it's bigger, I think. And there's a lot of debate as to what exactly Samhain was about, because it was obviously to celebrate to the change of season, and there was this idea, that's what they look like.
Good lord!
Isn't it terrifying? It looks like
Yep.
a face.
Oh, it looks like Michael Jackson.
But imagine little kids going around with those, carrying them and going door to door.
Turnip lanterns are terrifying.
I'd tell them to go away.
Then they're gonna send you straight to hell, Mr. O'Malley.
I don't care. Hellcat can warm up the fire for me, okay?
So, now, we know people would believe there might be supernatural encounters, but it's difficult to say if the actual festival was to honor the dead or not. And also, one weird thing is we don't have any early sources that mention a specific date of Samhain. That's October the 31st, November the 1st is just the general date, people went through
I'm
much
trying
later.
to find the pronunciation, but I can't even read the
Yeah,
pronunciation.
it's Celtic. So,
How would you describe that?
I really should have memorized the pronunciation before I came.
Samhain.
Samhain. Samhain.
Samhain. Samhain?
Samhain, that's it. Yep.
Samhain.
So
So the M
Samhain.
doesn't exist.
So we talked a little bit about Samhain, but now we're going to move on
Are you
to
talking bad about my language, lass?
Gaelic.
I can't
come up-
even handle English
I'll come up there
pronunciation.
and bop you right in the bahookie.
Bahuke.
I'll pop you just like Nessie's head sticking out of the lock.
Wrong. Oh, and that is Scotland.
Yeah.
You were doing Irish, weren't you? Or are you trying to be Scottish?
I kind of.
You're like going in and out.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he's a Scots-Irishman. Scots-Irish.
There you go.
Yep. Known
person who can have my lucky charms is the Loch Ness Monster.
old Nessie. So that was the Celtic holiday.
Shillelagh.
But now,
I'll stop.
No, you're good.
I think I was a little too close to the mic.
Yeah, I'm getting the crackles.
So we're going to move on to, there's this Christian holiday
Ooh.
that was also around the same time. Now, the actual name for Halloween has nothing to do with, demons or ghosts or ghouls, but it's actually All Hallows Eve. That is the day before All Hallows Day, which is also known as All Saints Day. And All Saints Day was on November the 1st, and from October 31st to November 2nd, there was a whole celebration in the Christian world called Allhallowtide. And that includes Halloween, obviously October 31st, All Saints Day, November the 1st, and All Souls Day on November the 2nd.
So it was a 3-day thing.
Yeah, it was a 3-day thing. Big event. So, this...
I'm sure a lot of depressed millennials wish Halloween would last 3 days.
Don't talk bad about millennials, Billy.
Or Halloween.
Or
Krampus
Halloween.
is just an invention of depressed millennials to try to
Oh,
take over a
Krampus is
superior
from Germany. I'm the history buff here,
Yeah,
Billy.
I know Krampus is from Germany, but then
Krampus
millennials
has been around forever,
then
though.
millennials abducted the legend to try to take over a superior holiday. It's
So,
true.
You
I
mean
don't
like
make
the
the
set it
rules.
off guy?
Well, yeah, the set it off guy. He's like the king of the depressed millennials.
Over my head. I'm not sure
Set
what's
it off
going
the
on.
band.
They have a whole song about him burning down Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
that one.
anyway,
I'll have to look that up.
He's like the Grinch on steroids.
That was a good pregnant pause we had there.
this holiday of All Saints Day and All Hallowtide was originally on May 13th, and
Wait. May?
okay, I'm going to explain that.
Okay.
So, originally on May 13th as a day to celebrate martyrs who died under pagan emperors. And although we know everyone celebrated a slightly different date. Like Syrian churches would celebrate it around Pascha Week, that's Easter. Greek churches would celebrate the Sunday after Pentecost, and Roman churches just did it May 13th. But what ended up happening is that Germanic, French, and English churches all picked November the 1st as this day for All Saints' Day. And then Pope Gregory III, who was Pope in the 700s, from 731 to 741, selected November the 1st as his official day. Now, there are two popular theories about why this happened. The popular one is that Pope Gregory III selected November the 13th to compete with Samhain and Christianize these pagan practices. However, as a counterpoint to that, the Irish had already been celebrating All Saints' Day before that, and they celebrate on April 20th, according to a source called the Martyrology of Onegus the Queedy.
That's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful. And another theory is that Pope Gregory was following a Germanic idea of holding a big feast in the fall for reasons we don't know about. And one popular theory of why he decided to switch the days was that if people came to Rome during May, that was during, very hot season. And during that time, people would get something called the Roman fever. And
The Roman fever.
yeah, it was just so hot, so sweltering, and so packed that, people would get sick and die.
That makes
So,
sense.
so it just made more practical sense to hold it during the fall when it's, a little bit cooler. And we do know that actually Charlemagne, who was, Emperor of France and Germany at the time, celebrated, and his son Louis the Pious made an official holiday. So what in the world is this holiday about? Well, All Saints' Day was a time to celebrate the spiritual bond between those in heaven, which the Catholics would call the Church Triumphant, and the living, the Church Militant. And it's currently celebrated today in the Catholic Church, Eastern Orthodox, as well as some Lutheran and Methodist and Anglican churches. And what the celebration involves itself varies, such as many countries in Europe, people will visit the cemetery and light candles and leave flowers on graves. And if you ever see pictures of All Saints' Day cemeteries, they'll make them look really beautiful. Like they'll just almost look like almost like a Christmas decoration, if you know what I mean.
Aw.
You know.
That's
And
nice.
And the Philippines, for example, many people will gather to clean and repair the tombs as well as hold family reunions at the cemetery and have a big feast.
This sounds very much like
Day of the Dead.
Day of the Dead. Yeah.
Yeah. But the specific point of All Saints...
Isn't Day of the Dead also on November 1st?
I think so.
It's around the same time.
Yeah, it's around the same... Well, yeah, and Day of the Dead in Mexico is sort of a combination of All Saints Day and also some earlier Aztec practices.
Okay.
So... And I lost my train of thought. All Saints Day specifically, for those that didn't get the previous point, it was to celebrate specifically people who had died who they believed were in heaven. So, the next day after All Saints Day was All Souls Day. And while All Saints Day celebrates people in heaven, All Souls is for who the Catholics and other people believed were in purgatory. And what purgatory is, for those who don't know, it's a theory that there's sort of this in-between state between heaven and hell.
A limbo.
A limbo state, yeah, where people who
Also known as the DMV.
Yeah, that's fair.
DMV.
Oh.
What's the longest you've ever been stuck in the DMV?
Well, the BMV here.
Yeah, BMV here.
There was a time when I had to go, when I turned 21 and I had to go get a big boy driver's license.
Yeah.
I had quite the showdown with the lady running the camera because she didn't want my bangs touching my eyebrows. So, yeah, we had, eventually, after 10 minutes of her arguing with me, she just goes, we could just use your old picture if you want.
That's so rude.
And I
Makes
was
sense.
like, you could have told me that to begin with, you sea hag, but...
Every single time we go to the DMV or the BMV, I forget something. And
Yeah.
I gotta go home and get it.
Oh, that's fair.
Even when I bring my entire file of everything
Yeah,
I've ever needed.
and the BMV, they don't really... The DMV
DMV was
and Louisville,
easier.
they barely require you to bring anything. It's basically, do you exist? Okay, cool, here is it. And Indiana's like, all right, we need proof that you live here. We need proof of your middle name. We need proof that...
I had to bring my birth certificate. I had to bring
all
my
of the
marriage
driving
license.
laws are stricter over here.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
had to take a test.
Yeah, written test.
I was like, I've been driving since I was 19. Why do I have to take a test?
And it doesn't make the drivers in Indiana any better. So...
No.
No, it most certainly does not.
So purgatory was basically a place that was believed for, people who, maybe they were somewhat religious, maybe they didn't really know a whole lot, but maybe they were just not the purest or the best
They
form of
weren't
people.
good people, they were okay people.
Yeah, okay people.
They're in the middle place.
Yeah, the middle place. For those who've watched The Good Place. Which
Excellent show.
it is
Please watch it.
It
It
is
is a great
amazing.
show. So... The goal of All Souls Day was to help these people who are in purgatory reach heaven by praying for their souls, in essence. But there would also be many other practices. For example, some people would ring bells around, their houses and churches to help, with their cleansing. And what other people would do is, this was during the Middle Ages, some Christians would bake soul cakes, and they would either leave it on graves or give it to the poor. And these soul cakes were often marked with the cross. And Christians would also light candles, which were meant to have a light lit for the souls in darkness. And in Brittany, which is an area in France, people would anoint the hollow of the tombstone with holy water, or they would pour milk on it.
What is the hollow of a tombstone? Was there just a specific spot?
Yeah, probably a specific little area.
Okay. So this was just France. They had a special tombstone.
And at bedtime, the kids' supper would be left on the table for all the souls.
Oh. Wait, so was this after everybody ate?
Yeah,
They just
after
left the
everyone ate,
leftovers?
leftovers.
It's like leaving cookies for Santa.
Except you had already eaten.
Yeah, so it's leaving cookies for dead Santa, basically.
Who's to say Santa's not dead?
Exactly.
Who's to say Santa's
Okay,
not
it's
an
it's
angel?
it's for
Santa is a false idol. That's another thing I took away from my years of Christian education.
yes, but that's for another episode.
Oh, are we doing Santa?
I assume we'll probably discuss
We should
history
do.
of Christmas.
We
Yeah, of
should
course we
do.
will.
Good old Kris Kringle.
I love Christmas. Yeah, this would be like the
But you love
okay. The
Halloween
okay.
more.
Yes, I do. I don't know what that says about me, but we'll get
Says
to
you're
that.
a filthy millennial.
No, it says that you're full of beans.
I embrace
You're a
my
You must
Millennial.
embrace your millennialness.
I embrace my beanishness.
You are a millennial.
No,
Embrace it.
I am
Embrace it.
beans.
Oh,
What?
Oh, I just saw. I
Oh,
thought
it's
it was,
penguins in
yes.
Star Wars. Oh, it's just,
I hate penguins. Nah, I'm just kidding. I love penguins.
Please don't say that.
yeah.
on
How
the-
dare you,
nice.
Billy? Billy, I will force
Penguins-
you to leave if you say
Penguins
one
are
more.
my friends.
Penguins. Never mind.
Penguins.
Penguins.
Penguins. Oh,
So
perfect.
now we're going to get, because we're actually going to walk back a little bit to All Hallows Eve, or as we know it, Halloween, October the 31st.
So we went from Souls Day is the 2nd. Now we're back to the 31st.
Yes, just
Okay.
doing it in that
Trying to
order.
get back on.
Because Halloween's
Or
cover what we're
moonwalk
talking
into
about.
Halloween.
So
You need me to start singing "This Is Halloween."
this
please.
is Halloween.
This is Halloween.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Or the Rise Against version.
That one's even better.
Making Christmas,
making Christmas, making Christmas.
So,
Banger.
hold on. Is that movie a Christmas movie or a Halloween
That movie is an overrated movie that millennials pretend is good.
I'd say Halloween movie,
Yeah.
personally, just because it's like that's who it centers around.
I think it's an in between. It's sort of for that whole season.
The director
That's
said
true.
it was
Yes.
Halloween, but yes,
I don't fault anybody who watches it on Christmas.
it's fun either way.
Yeah,
Yep.
one of the best soundtracks of any Disney movie.
Yeah, I mean, I do think I agree with
forgetting
you,
that it
Billy,
is
that it is a
Disney.
little bit overrated.
Yeah, because people talk about it like it's one of the best movies of all
Yeah.
time.
I saw it when I was older.
It's
so,
serviceable,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like The Greatest Showman. Fantastic music.
Oh yeah, that's
pretty
pretty-
decent
that's
story.
a perfect illusion right there.
So initially, the idea of Halloween wasn't that all that well known, other than people would commonly hold vigils the night before. And what vigils were was, you would gather together, at church very late at night, like midnight, and you might pray, sing some songs, maybe read the scriptures. And people still do that, like for on Christmas Eve. Like you'll sometimes see that, like a Methodist church will have like a Christmas Eve vigil or something like that. So, but what would end up happening is that Irish peasants got this idea. They're like, okay, we have a holiday for the saints in heaven. We have a holiday for those in purgatory. But what if, the people in hell start to get angry that they don't have a holiday?
Would they even know?
Well, and keep in mind, a lot of this is, medieval, superstitious ideas.
That's fair.
So they,
You think they'd be too busy going ah?
well,
It depends on the communication.
and to be fair, in the medieval world, they definitely really had a very strong idea of, like, people sort of wandering back and forth to talk to you, and also, demons coming at you at all times, so. Like, when Joan of Arc, for example, went to try to claim she had visions,
They said she was demonic.
Well, they tested her a
Yes.
lot in France to see, okay, is it from the devil or is it from, an angel? Because, if it's from the devil, then, it's going to be really bad. But if it's from an angel.
side note, but have you ever seen the M. Night Shyamalan movie Devil?
No.
No.
Really stupid movie. It's about a bunch of people who get trapped in an elevator, and one of them is the devil, and that one keeps picking everybody off one by one.
How many
But-
people are in the elevator?
A lot. It's a big elevator. But there's a scene in that movie where there's this middle-aged Hispanic man who's like a security guard for this building, and he's the one who knows that the devil is there. And he says, "I'll prove it to you." And he flips a piece of toast in the air, and he says, "Whenever the devil is near, the toast always lands jelly side down."
What?
So
Mine always lands jelly side down.
Where
I the
did this
devil?
man get this information?
it's an M. Night Shyamalan movie, so
Is it supposed to be a comedy?
I don't think so.
Because that's like the most comedic thing.
It's the
I've ever-
stupidest thing ever. But
It's like
I
that
thought
movie
it
you
was
told me about, like that werewolf movie where like the
Oh,
dog is
Bad Moon! Yeah, I love Bad Moon. It's one of the most ridiculous horror movies I've ever seen. It's like the weird thing is like that movie is like a total straight up gore fest horror movie. Whenever the werewolf is on screen,
Yeah.
which is only for like maybe 15% of the movie. The rest of it, it's like this made-for-TV family dog movie because it's all like the whole premise of this movie is that like the deadbeat uncle moves in with this single mom and her son, and he's a werewolf, and the only one who knows it is their dog,
who's named Thor,
whose
right?
name is Thor, and like it all
Amazing.
culminates in this giant like brutal R-rated fight scene between this dog and this werewolf. And oh man, one of the stupidest, like one of my favorite stupid horror movies ever. I really need to buy the
Yeah.
Blu-ray on that one because
Uh.
it's so dumb, but I love it.
Great stuff. So back to Halloween. So what the Irish peasants would do, as they would go around and they start blowing hordes and banging pots together on Halloween to, sort of, get the people in hell to calm down and not come bother them, like to scare
Wouldn't
them
that
away.
make them more mad?
They would think like making loud noises, being disruptive would say, all right, we're not going to bother with you.
Again, that would make them more mad.
If they want to cause mischief, because if you think of someone causing mischief, if you like a farmer, get off my front lawn.
So as opposed to celebrating the denizens of hell, they just wanted to kind of like poke them and keep them away.
Yeah, like
Poke
that.
them with a stick.
Yeah, poke them with a stick. Now, what another practice they would do around on All Hallows Eve and also All Souls Day is kids would go around and they would collect soul cakes in exchange for, prayers for the dead. They say
Sounds like an item in Devil May Cry.
Yeah, it does. But the soul cake were like,
They were the things with the cross.
yeah,
on
the
them.
things with the cross in
You
them.
talked about it a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Wasn't you?
And what they would call this practice, they call it souling.
So
This is just Dark Souls.
Yeah, it is. It's Dark Souls.
It literally is. It's at night, and they're collecting soul cakes.
Picking up souls.
And this might have be sort of our origin of trick-or-treating, kids going around asking for, please, sir, may I have a soul cake? I'll pray for your dead uncle.
So would they cause mischief if they didn't get a soul cake?
Well, I'm assuming, medieval kids probably would have. I mean, kids are kids.
That's fair.
People always cause mischief, no matter the time.
Trick or treat.
And there's also other interesting things that would happen, like during Allhallowtide, that 3-day celebration, churches would often bring out, their martyrs' relics. So it would be an alleged, finger of this guy who died, who was martyred. Or
Did they know it was his finger?
It probably wasn't, but, they would claim it was. Or like, a big one was people would claim they had the foreskin of Christ.
What?
Very often.
Why?
Yeah.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Why?
The foreskin. And it was just, they were especially believed that it was especially useful for fertility.
Fun.
But, never mind. I'm
Yeah.
not going into that.
Ay, Dios míos.
Propaganda sure has changed.
Yep.
Ay, yo quiero Taco Bell. Me gusta las tortugas con mucho, mucho queso y galletas.
See.
Why are we talking about cheese and Taco Bell and I don't remember the rest of
Well,
what
because
you
he said adios meals, so then he had to keep it going. So, but there were certain churches that may not be rich enough to, have access to these martyrs' relics. So they would do is they say, our congregation, you just dress up as, this dead saint, and that'll be good enough. So, how a lot of churches will have, like, fall festivals where they'll encourage sometimes the kids to dress up as, like, Bible figures?
Yes.
This might be the origin of that, all the way back in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, my old school, which will remain nameless. When I was in early elementary school at the old campus, because when I was in 3rd grade, they switched to a new campus.
Mm-hmm.
And back at the old campus, which was on the same property as a very large church, they used to hold a giant festival every year on the day of Halloween, which was pretty much just to keep the kids in school from trick-or-treating. So,
Gotcha. But it was like passing out candy, right?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
But, like, it wasn't like a dress-up kind of thing. It was like they would have like carnival games and a Ferris wheel. And I never went to it. I would just hear about it because I always loved trick-or-treating too much. But.
Gotcha. And when these little kids would go around, getting the soul cakes, they would also carry around the little turnip lanterns we talked about before, to sort of chase off, bad mojo or bad stuff. Or just, to look cool. Because why wouldn't you take your turnip with you?
We need to make a turnip.
Those turnips would attract bad mojo.
They believed it scared it away.
Now, if I wanted to get a demon, I would just go spout some gibberish and wave one of those things in the air. If I wanted to go get possessed by the psychic Bigfoot, that's what I
Psychic
would do.
Bigfoot. Or Mothman.
Mountain Monsters is the best show of all time, and I highly recommend all the listeners watch it.
It's a great show.
Bear Beast.
Bear Beast. So other practice on Halloween is in places like Austria, England, and Ireland, people would have candles burning in every room to help guide back souls back home, to visit their earthly homes for, one night, spend some time. And many Europeans believed that on Halloween, the souls of the departed would wander the earth. And they were supposed to, leave the earth on All Saints' Day. But Halloween was their last chance to get
very
revenge.
Day of the Dead.
Yeah. Halloween was sort of their last chance, their last hoorah. So people, a lot of times, would often wear masks to sort of hide their identities from these angry ghosts. Because, Now, there is one big event that happens in European history that really sort of makes Halloween what it is today.
Galvanizes it.
Calvin, yes.
Galvanizes.
And that is none other than the bubonic plague.
Bring around the
Rosie,
whatever. I don't
A pocket full of posies.
Rosie's ashes, ashes, we all fall down.
Ah.
It's so creepy that we still know that song, but that was from the Black Death.
I've
Yeah, that
done it
song's
with
about the plague.
children before, and then I remembered that it's like about dying.
I remember when I first learned that, I was maybe 8 or 9 years old at the Nashville Science Center as a kid, and that was also the first time I saw a cardboard cutout of a plague doctor, and it traumatized poor
It
me.
is terrifying
the guy
with
with
the
like the
beak?
crow, the
Yeah.
beak and the hat.
They put like spices and stuff to protect them from the plague,
Interesting.
and that's
Yeah.
why it's shaped like that. But it's still terrifying.
It is. And the plague, for those that don't know, the Black Plague began in Europe around the 1300s, and I believe it was spread by probably rats, on
Probably
ships,
rats.
especially
Actually, the animal that was most responsible for spreading the plague were gerbils,
gerbils.
Wait, why gerbils?
Interesting.
because gerbils were pretty widely spread as pets. So
I had no idea.
Interesting.
rats weren't blameless, but
Right.
the main animals that spread the plague were gerbils.
Interesting. I'll have to look that
Rodents.
up. That's very interesting. Yeah. So it was spread. It began on the Silk Road, which the Silk Road, for those that don't know, was basically a big trade network that stretched all the way from India throughout Europe and China.
That's the only thing I remember from AP World History.
But don't you remember Genghis Khan and the Mongols?
Well, yeah, that and
Nah,
Silk Road.
Our,
Yeah,
teacher,
they accept
our
them.
teacher was very angry and would actually only teach real history for about 10 minutes before he would go down a really angry rant talking about his opinions and how.
That always stinks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the Black Death appeared, and it killed, we estimate, probably about a third of the population in Europe, because this just swept through, like, mercilessly and would just destroy entire villages. So, people after that got a very different headspace from, going through that.
Well,
And-
that's traumatic.
yeah. And there are a couple things that happen as a result. The first thing is that people become more of sort of a, eat and drink for tomorrow we die. Let's party it up, live it up, because it seems like, death is just around the corner.
And it
Oh, yeah.
really was at that
Yeah.
point.
And another thing that happened is that you get much more macabre artwork and more interesting celebrations that would pop up. For example, people began to talk about something called the dance macabre, the macabre dance, where they believe
Olé.
people, especially in France, would believe that the dead would rise up on Halloween for one last wild, evil festival.
Soiree.
Yeah, soiree. And you can actually look at churches in Europe during this time, and you'll see it around. Like, if you ever see those really old medieval paintings that have, like, skeletons dancing around and causing havoc, that's what that was. And now it's also the Ring Around the Rosie was inspired by that. And what they would often do is that villages and court masquerade balls during the Middle Ages and continuing would often dress up as corpses and go for a party in the Middle Ages, specifically on All Souls Day. And this is probably the inspiration for all sorts of things, like, Halloween parties, like dressing up like ghouls and goblins and skeletons and stuff like that. And even though there's the party aspect, there's also sort of the religious aspect of it, where the Catholics very much believed in memento mori, remember you are mortal. And that's really representing their art and their practices that just keep in mind your mortality. And remember that, and, live your life, as if you might die tomorrow, because you might. So that's
YOLO.
Yeah, YOLO, essentially. But,
Round
with
before.
YOLO, but also with some Jesus thrown in,
You only live once. And
Yeah.
then you die
YOLOge.
to see Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay,
And that's,
hold on. What?
No, just YOLOge.
YOLO.
You only
YOLOge.
live once.
Jesus.
Yeah,
Unless you're Jesus, then you only live twice.
twice, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, twice, yeah. And,
Wait, let me think about this for a second.
And interestingly enough, like a lot of the artwork and things we associate with more gothic and like, the scary stuff, almost all of it has its roots in this Catholic memento mori artwork. Like, it was funny. I actually saw this tweet with this gothic girl was just like, dress up so that you're the reason the nun clutches your pearls. And this nun responded and was like, oh, please, honey, we have skulls decorated in our church.
Like the real skulls.
Yeah, like, okay, there is actually a cathedral that is made of human bones.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's really cool, really creepy, but
Where is it?
It's in like Czechoslovakia.
That's some Paris catacomb crap.
Yeah, like even the chandelier and the altar, everything.
Do people go there and have services and stuff, or is it mostly? Just
I think it's mostly
tourist thing?
artwork, but I mean, you could have services in there.
Dank
why wouldn't
history
you?
field trip.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Fire up the plane, boys.
We're
flying machine.
We're going on a trip.
In our favorite rocket ship.
In our favorite.
There's no room for little Einsteins here.
No, I say there is room for little Einsteins. This is my show.
We are little Einstein.
Little Einstein. So what's interesting is like, okay, you see all this sort of Catholic love for this holiday. Well, what happened when the Protestants came around?
Oh, that is a good point.
Because like obviously the Protestants start coming around in the 1500s under a guy named Martin Luther. You might have heard of him. You know,
Some of us have.
Martine.
He had a lot of complaints. He nailed them to the door. 95 of them, in fact.
On Halloween, right?
He nailed his 95 Reese's.
Yes, he actually did. That's why it's also known as Reformation Day. Mm-hmm. Yep. So many Protestants didn't really like Halloween and the whole Allhallowtide holiday season because they really disagreed with the idea of purgatory.
Okay.
That's fair.
For example, especially Calvinists, and Calvinists, they were the followers of a guy named John Calvin. He was one of the church reformers, lived in France and then Switzerland. And they called it popish doctrine, which means papal, because they believed it was inconsistent with the doctrine of predestination, which basically believes your fate is determined before you're born, essentially. It gets a lot more complicated, but...
Which completely destroys the need for purgatory.
Yeah, exactly. And so one idea that would come about is they would say, well, there aren't really any spirits around. Those have to be demons. Now, not all Protestants were like this. For example, there were some Protestants who kept up the idea of this intermediate space like purgatory, but they call it something different, like Hades or the bosom of Abraham or something like that.
Bosom of Abraham.
Yeah, when Jesus talks about Lazarus and the rich man, it says he's in Abraham's bosom.
One of the most fun parables.
Yeah, one of the most fun ones. The bosom of Abraham would have been something like an intermediate state. It wouldn't.
Is that why the guy was able to see the other guy in hell?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Because, it was just a sort of more intermediate sort of period.
Interesting.
So, some places in early America specifically, such as more Anglican areas, did celebrate All Hallows Eve and, Allhallowtide, but Puritans definitely opposed it because they hated anything to do with the Catholics.
You could have just ended it at anything. They hated anything.
Yeah, well, they didn't hate everything, but they were pretty, they did earn their name. Puritan,
Got to keep it pure.
Pure. So what really ends up happening in America is that when America first begins, like Allhallowtide and Halloween really isn't that well known because, why else would you need it? I mean, that's a Catholic thing. And one idea and also the Catholics more had an idea of spirits sort of being present and sort of able to wander around, where Protestants are like, no, not at all. They're either in one place or another. Now, the practice of Halloween would come to America through a good old thing called immigration.
Cool.
So, and then, which is a good thing, I believe.
A very good thing.
In the 19th century...
You wouldn't be here.
Yeah, I wouldn't be here. Because my granddad came from Denmark.
Exactly.
Yeah, right after World War II.
Hinga-dinga-durgan.
That was a SpongeBob reference.
What?
And most
Did I
of
say
us...
something
prob-
offensive?
No.
I'm sorry.
I didn't know what you were talking
Yeah,
about.
that
That gave me a really bad look.
No, you're just
That
confused.
was a scary
I was
face.
confused.
I'm
That was
sorry.
her confused look.
I
She,
Am I
mean-
confused?
she has a nasty...
No,
she has a resting expressionful face.
If it's any consolation,
I
I'm
like
pretty,
the way you put that.
If it's any consolation, I'm pretty sure my mom's side of the family came from Ireland, and I've been making that stupid leprechaun voice for half the show. So
Yep.
clearly, I just make fun of everybody.
Oh, stop. I was
No, it's
just
all good.
confused because I was like, is that the Swedish chef?
No, this is the Swedish chef. That's
That's a good one.
the Swedish chef. Back at our high school, we had a janitor who talked like that. True story.
That's great.
Really?
That's fantastic.
He got fired for cussing at the boys' wrestling team. He said he was tired of picking up their feces,
Makes sense.
but he didn't say feces. If you
Oh,
catch
that's-
it.
Did he say it in the Swedish chef's
Couldn't
voice?
understand a word that guy
Probably.
said.
So when immigrants from Ireland, Scotland, and France started to come over, they would bring, their traditions from this Allhallowtide place. And as these immigrants, especially like, the French and Irish people would intermarry, these practices started to mix together. And there was one other holiday that came from, good old England, the motherland. and that was Guy Faux Day, Guy Fawkes Day. And that
Guy
was
Faux or Guy Fawkes?
Guy Fieri?
Guy Fieri Day.
I
Flavor
think Guy
Town.
Fawkes is probably the most accurate. And that was a holiday on November the 5th, and that was to commemorate...
Remember the 5th of November.
Yeah, people only remember it from that movie,
V for Vendetta.
V for Vendetta,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it was about this guy.
The greatest movie that nobody's ever seen.
I've seen
I've
it.
seen it.
It's a good one.
It was on Netflix.
Yeah, good
Isn't
movie.
Natalie Portman in that movie?
Yes.
Yes.
Fun.
So, Guy Fawkes, he was a Catholic guy, tried to blow up Parliament in the 1600s. He failed, and ever after that, people in Britain would have these huge holidays where they would play pranks, they'd dress up in costumes, they'd light bonfires.
Wait, what does that have to do with a guy blowing up Parliament?
Anarchy.
Anarchy,
Okay.
they'd have like little effigies of Guy Fawkes, and they'd
That makes
also,
sense.
more meanly, they just go around and harass Catholics and demand that they give them treats and beer.
People still do that today. It's called trick or treating.
Yeah,
Minus
but
the beer.
the Guy Fawkes Day mixed together with Allhallowtide and the Dance Macabre from the French traditions, and that sort of started to create the Halloween we know today. And other things that would happen is that jack-o'-lanterns first popped up. And so we talked about the turnips, but in the 19th century, especially in England and Ireland, people would start to, make them out of pumpkins. And we don't really know their true purpose of these jack-o'-lanterns or the turnips. Some see it as representing, the souls in purgatory, or just to keep, bad presences out, or just to frighten people. And also there's this legend of this guy named Stingy Jack in Ireland. And that's, a drunk Irishman who bargains with Satan and then's doomed to roam the earth stuck between heaven and hell with only a turnip to light his way.
Wait, was the turnip put together, or was it just a plain turnip?
He just had a turnip. It would just light his way and follow him.
A magical lighting turnip.
It's old
Amazing.
Stingy Jack.
Man, this sounds like the greatest anime never made.
It does.
We need to pitch this to somebody.
We do it. We need to pitch it to the people who made Kill la Kill. What's their name?
Trigger?
Trigger.
Trigger, yes.
Oh,
There needs to
man.
be a show about Stingy Jack. Stingy Jack Chan.
We gotta write a letter, boys.
Let's do it. So, in the early 20th century in America, Halloween really wasn't established as sort of a capitalistic night. It was more just a night where teens would put on masks and just cause problems. Because, I mentioned Guy Fawkes Day, which was about mischievousness mixed with, all the dressing up from the Dance Macabre and the All Souls Day. And it got really bad with these teenagers running around. Like in 1933, and you might recognize that year because it's, it's right in the middle of the Great Depression. Mm-hmm. People started calling that year Black Halloween because it was just the maximum amount of damage ever done by just, kids and teenagers running around just destroying stuff.
Sad state of affairs.
Yeah. So as a result, businesses began trying to get kids to do something else. And at first, businesses would sort of bribe the kids with candy, like, hey, don't destroy my shop and I'll give you this candy bar. But they decided, well, we need a better tactic. So what they would do is they would hold Halloween parties and, costume contests to sort of, hey, let's get these kids into, a controlled environment where they're not going to be, ripping stuff apart, TPing houses and stuff like that. So stores would then begin selling Halloween decorations, Halloween costumes. And from there, the spookiness started to become real big business. Like in 1938, I believe, we first see the term trick-or-treat emerge. So the trick-or-treat term really isn't that old. I mean, it's only like...
It's coming up on 80, 90 years?
Yeah, but relatively speaking, it's a pretty young
It's still
term.
like the modern era, you'd say.
Yeah. And, this term seems to have come from the fact, as I mentioned before, that, the businesses would give treats to the kids so they wouldn't play a trick on them.
So the tricks came before the treats.
Yeah, the tricks came way before the treats. And then, candy companies, quickly picked up on the potential of this. And, they started, packaging candy for Halloween.
And bam, Halloween.
Yeah, ban Halloween. So that's what's really interesting about this because, Halloween really has a twisty, turny history, more than almost any other holiday.
It's a bunch of different pieces of like different things.
Yeah, because, Christmas obviously, has a complex history, but there's sort of a start point to it, and, there's some extra things that get added along, but it's still sort of the same basic thing. Whereas Halloween just sort of goes off in a million different directions. So that being said, we have to discuss what is Halloween anyway, and, is it a good thing at all? So it's difficult to start with, it's difficult to say exactly how and where Halloween even came from because the traditions are pretty mixed. However, I have a few theories and conclusions. First, I don't think we can draw a direct line between Halloween and the more pagan holiday of Samhain. Samhain?
What did we
forgot
say
it.
it
I
was?
forgot it already. Anyway, so while the holidays share some similarities, definitely with the fall thing, the origin of All Saints' Day likely has nothing to do with this other Celtic holiday. Second, it's true that the holiday drew a huge amount of inspiration from local legends and superstitions, such as Irish banging pots to distract, souls in hell. However, these practices really aren't pagan since they emerged long after paganism was gone.
People were banging pots for a long time.
Yeah. Third, it makes sense that the fall would be a time to consider death and these if the possibility of ghosts, since nature itself is dying, but at the same time it's dying in a beautiful way. I mean, all the trees are changing.
It's like right before winter, which is the death of everything.
Yeah, the air gets crisper, but also the harvest is coming in. So you have more time to just gather together and tell stories.
It's like the natural conclusion of the year.
Yeah. So my fourth thing was that the origin of Halloween can't really be called evil, like many people might say, because it's such a mixture of things, some bad, some good, and a lot of it's just based off people's experiences. And our modern Halloween is only less than 100 years old. And fifth, much of today's hatred for Halloween, I really do think came from their more anti-Catholic sentiment, because Allhallowtide was such a Catholic holiday, so it makes sense that Protestants wouldn't like it. If you've ever read Jack Chick's comics, which are very anti-Halloween, you also find he doesn't like Catholics. And I would encourage all our listeners to look up one particular Jack Chick track, because there's this one there's this Halloween party, and the devil shows up wearing a jack-o'-lantern mask, and this redneck police officer is like, "There's the devil! It's the devil himself!"
You say he has the chainsaw too.
Yeah, he has a chainsaw, and he's wearing a jack-o'-lantern.
That's awesome.
It's like, boy, we've had the devil attack Halloween parties for the last 5 years.
He stole that from that one guy who has the hockey mask and the chainsaw.
Jason.
Yeah.
Thank
He has,
you.
he has a machete, not a chainsaw.
Well, okay.
Yeah, Texas-
Leatherface is
yeah,
the guy with the
Leatherface
chainsaw.
is the one with the.
Yeah, from Texas
But either
Chainsaw
way,
Massacre.
he stole it from them.
I'm more of a monster guy than a slasher guy, so.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
the
I don't
biggest
know
fan
them.
of slasher
Yeah.
movies.
Lame.
So, yeah, what do you all think of this holiday? Do you think it's good, bad, neutral? What do you think about it?
The way I see it, I think regardless of the origins of Halloween, you got to look at it for what it is now. And nowadays, Halloween is just a time of year where we can appreciate the darker and spookier things in just a nice, fun way. Maybe enjoy a good scare, watch a couple of scary movies, and give candy to kids. And in some of our cases, stay inside and play Luigi's Mansion. So honestly, I don't think there's anything. I don't think there's anything wrong with the modern incarnation of Halloween. I think it's just all in good fun.
Right.
So that's the way I look at it. I've always loved Halloween ever since I was a kid. So
Curse, what are your thoughts on it?
I don't even necessarily think people have to celebrate the spooky element of Halloween to really
No.
celebrate Halloween. If you're just dressing up as a Power Ranger or something like I did when I went trick or treating when I was little. I mean, ultimately, when we distill it down to what it is today, it's 99% commercialism,
Right.
if not more.
Yeah, and I'll share my thoughts later. But Kate, what do you think?
I like Halloween. I think it's a good way to get to know your neighbors and share what you have. I remember the first time I went trick-or-treating, I was 16, and I was so enamored by it. I grew up very conservative.
it's okay.
They were very
Like I
kind
said,
when they
I-
realized it was my first time.
I knew people. I knew people growing up whose families would lock themselves in the basement on Halloween because they were afraid of the demons. So.
Yeah. And what I think is what's so interesting is that Halloween as a holiday, I mean, because, I don't draw a direct line between it and the Celtic holiday, but as a holiday, with All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day, what it really began as more of just sort of remembering the people who were lost and,
Like a
thinking
Memorial
about,
Day.
Yeah, it was almost like a memorial. Remember those people, celebrate them, celebrate, if they're in heaven, celebrate them. If they're not, pray for them or just remember them, go to the grave sites, decorate them, make them look pretty. So I really think that's sort of a lost sort of element of the season, except, obviously some places do celebrate it, in Philippines and in, Europe. But I personally think that's a big lost element of the whole season.
Yeah, a day of reflection.
Yeah. But overall, I think, Halloween, I'll all the time see these videos that are like, did you know that it's for celebrating the devil? It's like, well, no, not really. And I think a lot of it just boils down to the big fright that comes from Halloween is obviously, the fear of death, the fear of, the creepy crawlies and stuff like that. But as everyone else mentioned, you can choose to celebrate or not celebrate however you want, And
It's a very different type of
flexible.
holiday. You can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, and it's so different than others because, Thanksgiving is just, you gather together, you eat some food, and then you pass out. And then
you talk about what you're thankful for.
You talk about what you're thankful
Christmas
for.
is mostly present. I mean, there's some basic stuff to it, but Halloween can be whatever you want. If you want to go trick-or-treating, if you want to stay home and play Luigi's Mansion, if you want to go trunk-or-treating, or
Yeah, if you want to have apple cider.
or go
Or if you just
bobbing
want to
for
buy your
apples.
kids a bunch of candy and just chill. Whatever.
Yeah,
Or you just want to stay in and watch some spooky movies.
exactly. Or you want to go to spooky places. I mean, it's one of the best times of the year. So that, in conclusion, I think it's obviously likely that some pagan practices did filter down to this time of the year, but it definitely wasn't a 1-to-1, and that's okay. That one last thing before we finish, but that's sort of a pet peeve of mine because you watch these videos, they'll be talking about a holiday or something. They'll say, "You see, this was inspired by this, and this came directly from this," and most of the time they're wrong. Most of the time, things are a little more complicated than that. Things get a
World's
little
just
more,
not that cut and dry.
yeah, things are a little more twisty. Or they'll say like, "This man, put Christmas on December 25th because of pagan practices." It's like, well, no, because that actual the winter solstice is on December 21st. It's not on December 25th. So, but that's one of my personal pet peeves as a historian. But yeah, that was Halloween, and I really enjoy it. I hope you all enjoy it.
Stay safe on Halloween. Don't let your
Yes.
kids trick or treat alone.
Oh, and
Please. Please
We're
don't.
not going to be here, right? We're
No.
not- we are handing out
Oh,
candy.
yes. Next Thursday, we will not be here. We'll be with old Billy and Curtis, We'll be helping to
I
hand out
love
candy.
passing out candy. That was my dream as a child. I always wanted to pass
Oh.
out candy. And then I did
You
it for
wanna-
the first time last
You
year.
want to
and
pass out candy, you're going to get the experience.
so
we should
excited.
we should dress up as the guy, Brad.
Did I tell you?
guy.
Did I tell you how many candy bars we have? Because we have close to 600.
We're
That's
still
a
going
lot.
to bring
So-
some, and
Yeah.
I bet we'll run out.
You really don't have. I mean, you can if you want, but we've got like.
Might as well
We've
give
got
some
we've
extra.
We need to help.
We've got about.
Donate.
We've-
Give to the poor.
Okay, well, we've got almost 600.
And
so
I
if
bet
you
that
want
they're
to-
going to run out if what you said is true about your neighborhood.
It's the neighborhood in Jeff to
So,
treat at. So.
Do you guys want to plug your show real quick? Before
Yeah,
we sign
by
off?
all means. Follow us. We're Myths and Monsters. We talk all about ghosts, cryptids, and all things in between. We've been doing an entire Halloween-themed series throughout October. The first 3 episodes of it are on our YouTube page right now. But next Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we will be back to talk about some werewolves.
Next Wednesday?
Wednesday, excuse me, my bad.
Yeah, we're
Next
not going to
Wednesday.
be here.
I'm sorry. I'm,
So- You're
I'm
good.
dumb.
And you'll
But yeah.
definitely know whether werewolves are real.
To be fair,
And
you
follow
had...
our social medias. We're at myths_monsters on Instagram and at monsters_myths on Twitter.
And you can follow Dank History at HistoryDank, capital H, capital D on Twitter. You can also watch our videos on YouTube, and I will be